In this video, I am going to cover the different types of errors that you can make when you're conducting a hypothesis test. And this is for any type of hypothesis test. It's not specific to proportions or means. And so let's fill in this table. We're told the definitions up here, so let's use these definitions to fill in this table. Essentially, I want to look at this like a multiplication table, right? So is it either an error or a correct decision when I have both of these two things? When my null hypothesis is true and I decided not to reject it, right? So if you have a true statement, then you don't want to reject it, and so this is going to be a correct decision. So here, this is what you should do. If your null hypothesis is true, don't reject it. However, if your null hypothesis is true and you do reject it, this is when you've made a type 1 error. So now let's look at what happens when your null hypothesis is false. So if your null hypothesis is false and you decide not to reject it, that's definitely an error, right? If you have a false statement, it should be rejected. And so here, this is going to be a type 2 error. And then this very last one, if H naught is false, if your null hypothesis is false, then you should reject it, right? And so here, this is the correct decision. So you want to have these two pairs together. Anything else is wrong, right? It's one of the two types of errors. So now let's use the information that we just filled out above to answer these questions about whether or not the dean of a business school has made an error. And so she wants to know if the mean starting salary of the students that graduate from her school is greater than $50,000. And so we're going to state the null and alternative hypotheses. And so technically, I have not yet talked about what happens when you are testing a mean. I've only covered examples with proportions. And so I would not worry too much about this for right now. But in my null and alternative hypothesis, instead of having P, I'm going to have the population mean. Because that's what I'm given, right? I'm told that the mean is equal to $50,000, not the proportion. And so I will talk about how to fully test a mean in a few videos. But for now, just kind of know that we're using a different variable. And so because she wants to know if it's greater than this, her alternative hypothesis is going to be that mu is greater than $50,000. And so again, we're not going to be actually doing any testing here. We're just going to see if she's made any errors. So we're given 3 different scenarios. In the first one, part B, we're told that the true mean is $50,000. But she decides to reject H naught. So think about what H naught is saying in comparison to this statement right here that I underlined. If the true mean is $50,000 and the null hypothesis is saying that the mean is $50,000, then this is implying that H naught has a true statement. And you don't want to reject a true statement. And she decided to reject it. So here she has made a type 1 error. Now let's look at part C, the second scenario. In this one, we're told that the true mean is $55,000, and she rejects H naught again. Well, if the true mean is $55,000, then the null hypothesis that states that it's $50,000 cannot also be true. So this is implying that H naught is false, and so you do want to reject a false statement, so here she has made a correct decision. So now let's move on to this third scenario, where the true mean is again $55,000, but this time she does not reject the null hypothesis. Well, we already saw, so this is the same scenario, this is the same mean that we were given above, so we already know that this implies that H naught is false. We already know that you want to reject a false statement, but here, for some reason, she decides not to reject it, which means that she has made a type 2 error.